My name is Cindy Dodds. I'm the mom of Kyle Cole Dodds, 24 years old, and we're here because he was a great kid. There are a lot of families that think that this cannot happen to them because they raised their children well. We raised our child well. He was happy. He was a great kid. He got an opiate at 15 that changed the course of his life. Kyle's gateway drug was at 13, some pot and alcohol. It wasn't an everyday thing because he was an athlete, so I missed it. So at 15, he played very big for his size at Westminster Christian School football, the love of his life. And as a result, he tore the labrum off of both shoulders. So the first surgery, when they gave him the first opiate, which was hydrocodone, he was euphoric. And we didn't understand what was happening except that he was asking for it over and over. He went on to have 2 more surgeries as a result of football. And after his senior season at Westminster, the monster was out because he was no longer fighting to play football and keeping it under control. So we fought hard with him, not against him, with him. He wasn't an addict in his mind. He was a strong person that was raised right. He had no excuse. We heard that over and over. I have no excuse, Mom. So he couldn't allow himself to accept the fact that he was an addict. And that's I don't believe he ever got past the first step in AA and NA. It's important to me to be able to have the laws in place, to be able to strengthen the prosecution of the people that actually do the crimes for them, for the victims' families, and to stop the future of this type of epidemic. It's very depressing what's going on for this generation. We're losing a generation of very bright, talented, wonderful kids. Fathers, mothers, sons, all of it. It's a very, very scary time.
A drug dealer who prosecutors said showed total disregard for human life was sentenced Friday to 30 years in federal prison for supplying the fentanyl that caused the Palm Beach County man's fatal overdose. Christopher Messina was found criminally liable for the death of Christian Ty Hernandez. The fentanyl Messina sold to Hernandez was 50 to 100 times more powerful than the heroin the victim thought he was buying, according to prosecutors. He was ordered on Friday to pay $5,000 in restitution to the victim's parents, and his prison time will be followed by 3 years of supervised release. The prosecution said the most recent statistics available show that drug overdoses in Palm Beach County have increased 425%, and the county has a higher number of overdose deaths than Broward or Miami-Dade counties. Investigators said they hope other drug dealers will pay attention to the case and the legal consequences they could face. Hernandez's parents and siblings said they are now working to help other families and to try to influence legislation. Hernandez's mom said she urges other families who are coping with addiction to let go of the shame many feel and work to improve the world.
An historic drug arrest in Clay County. For the first time, a man is charged with murdering a local college student because deputies say his drugs killed her. 32-year-old Tremaine Muller is charged with selling a lethal dose of fentanyl that killed 18-year-old Ariel Brundage, a student at FSCJ. Channel 4's Denise Harris is joining us live from Clay County, where the sheriff had strong words for people who commit crimes like this in his community. Denise?
Tom, very strong words. In a room full of reporters, the Clay County Sheriff's Office and also the State Attorney's Office said that this will not be the last time that a drug dealer is charged with murder for giving drugs to someone that they say killed them.
Detectives arrested Tremaine Lucky Muller. I think Lil Lucky ain't so lucky no more. And unfortunately for him, he decided to peddle his products in Clay County, and I think luck ran out. So I'm changing his street name from Lucky to Unlucky.
Clay County Sheriff Daryl Daniels is referring to 32-year-old Tremaine Muller, now charged with the murder of an 18-year-old Duval County Schools graduate. She died in November last year with a toxic amount of heroin laced with fentanyl. Her father described her as an outgoing, helpful, and pleasant daughter. According to deputies, Ariel Brundage, a freshman at FSCJ, was with her boyfriend, 26-year-old Tyler Hamilton, and another man, 32-year-old Christopher Williams, when she died. Deputies say they bought the drugs that killed her. Now they are facing manslaughter charges for her death. Today's murder case involving drugs is the first for Clay County, and Sheriff Daniels has a message for anyone who deals drugs or commits crimes there.
We talked about dragging people from the gates of hell in the past, and so we don't have to do that, get the hell out of Clay County, or we'll come get you wherever you are.
According to the sheriff's office, this is one of 49 drug overdose deaths in Clay County last year. Those cases are now being reviewed for possible murder charges for other drug dealers. In addition to the deaths, there were also 448 overdoses. In that case, the person does not die, but they're brought back to life with Narcan. Also, with regard to this story, they're saying it's very important for folks to understand fentanyl is not the only drug they will come to you for with a possible murder charge. Any drug a drug dealer is selling that kills someone that is using drugs, they could potentially go after you with a murder charge. Live in Clay County, Janice Harris, Channel 4, the local station.
Then let's charge car makers for murder when we're killed in them. Let's charge tobacco for killing me. Let's charge alcohol makers for killing me. Let's charge drug makers for people that overdose on them. Then let's charge the gun makers because my gun went off and killed someone. Let's charge the city with murder because I tripped and fell and hit my head and died. The best one is let's charge Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Prummell with murder because 5 people died is his jail under his watch and there was no outside investigation. Should drug dealers face murder charges for overdoses? State Attorney Melissa Nelson thinks so. State Attorney Melissa Nelson wants to investigate overdoses as murders. Experts say that approach won't stop the deaths. State Attorney Melissa Nelson broke new ground in May with an unprecedented drug prosecution that gained national attention. But it was not the kind of attention Nelson has grown accustomed to receiving. The same types of academics who endorsed Nelson's policies on juvenile justice, the death penalty and wrongful convictions criticized the decision by the new state attorney to bring murder and manslaughter charges in the fentanyl overdose of an 18-year-old woman. This prosecution in Clay County could be an indication that amid an epidemic of opioid abuse, Nelson intends to be harsh on drug dealers. In an interview, she said she will seek first-degree murder charges, which carry a minimum of life in prison, for overdose cases when appropriate in order to keep the public safe from those responsible for this deadly crisis. This, she said, is the legal response to the loss of life. Yet experts say these prosecutions won't make the public safer. It is exactly the opposite of what we generally think of as best practice, said Jonathan Calkins, a drug policy expert at Carnegie Mellon University, when the charges were announced. See also. State Attorney promised to reform the office. 6 months later, has she delivered? Searches on for wrongful convictions are at the State Attorney's office. Beyond the policy questions, there are concerns over the legality of such a prosecution. While Florida's murder statute allows prosecutors to go after drug dealers in overdose cases, the statute lists what drugs apply, and fentanyl isn't specifically listed. Just last week Governor Rick Scott held a ceremony to celebrate the addition of fentanyl to the law, but that addition will only affect cases after October 1 and won't impact Nelson's murder prosecution. If prosecutors think fentanyl applies under the old law, they are frankly wrong, said Paul Duering, a pharmacology professor at the University of Florida who has testified for prosecutors. Other legal experts also said the defense may have a chance to dismiss the murder charge. She's not breathing. Last November, Ariel Brundage and her boyfriend, Tyler Hamilton, finished a shift together at Cracker Barrel and asked another friend to pick them up. Brundage told Hamilton she wanted to try heroin, he later told police. The friend who was driving, Christopher Williams, asked for a cell phone. A guy who went by Lucky said he could supply the drug, according to Williams and Hamilton's statements to police. They agreed Brundage should use only a small amount, according to the two men's statements. As Brundage was sleeping, her breathing grew labored, according to the police reports. Her boyfriend Googled what to do in the case of a heroin overdose. At 4:14 a.m., Williams called 911. Hamilton began chest compressions. "My friend's girlfriend," Williams told the dispatcher, "she's not breathing." The dispatcher asked for their number, and Hamilton interrupted. "She's not breathing." Twice, the dispatcher asked what Brundage was doing before she stopped breathing. "Was she doing drugs or anything?" "No," Williams said. "We picked her up from work from Cracker Barrel." The dispatcher advised Hamilton on how to perform CPR, and then she asked Williams again if Brundage used heroin or any other drug. "Not that we know of," he said. The police arrived, and Brundage died. Later, police said, a toxicology report found she had a lethal dose of fentanyl. The police and prosecutors never said if she also had heroin or any other drugs. If she took other drugs, that could make it harder for prosecutors to prove that it was the fentanyl that killed her. The police report also never described when or how Brundage took the drugs. Police spent 6 months investigating her death as a homicide before announcing a murder charge against Trumaine Muller and manslaughter charges against Williams and Hamilton. Each has pleaded not guilty. Muller, police said, was the man called Lucky, and the drug deal was as good as murder. Murder by overdose laws not new. In 1982, Florida first expanded its first-degree murder statute to include drug dealers. If prosecutors can prove that the opium or any synthetic or natural salt, compound, derivative, or preparation of opium that caused someone's death was sold by a specific dealer, then that dealer can be convicted of first-degree murder, which carries a minimum of life. Over time, the law was updated to name specific drugs that qualify, but fentanyl wasn't named until the latest bill, which will only affect future cases. To prove Muller committed murder, prosecutors must show he sold the drugs Brundage took, that the drugs weren't later tampered with, and that Brundage died as a result of those drugs. But they'll also need to argue that fentanyl qualifies under the law. Duering, the pharmacology professor, noted the law doesn't mention opiates or opioids, and opium is a different substance. Fentanyl is not a derivative of opium. In 2009, the 4th District Court of Appeals threw out a murder conviction for a similar reason. The victim died of a methadone overdose, and at the time, methadone wasn't listed in the statute. Even the prosecution's pharmacologist testified that methadone couldn't be a synthetic of opium since there was no such thing as a synthetic of opium because it is not feasible to synthesize opium, the court opinion noted. Muller's attorney, Michael Bosson, said he'll wait for evidence from the prosecutors and a chance to interview their witnesses, but he plans to ask a judge to dismiss the murder charge. Nelson discussed her office's policies, but she wouldn't discuss Muller's case or why she believes the law applies. Days after announcing the arrest, Clay County Sheriff Darrell Daniels appeared on a news show and said the charge was possible thanks to a new law. But at that point, the fentanyl bill wasn't even a law because Scott hadn't yet signed it. Daniels' chief of detectives, Wayne McKinney, admitted these murder cases are very hard to pursue. The inherent nature of these cases makes it very difficult to prosecute. Because of this, the detectives also arrested Muller on unrelated drug charges. One of those cases involved heroin laced with fentanyl. If we can't get the murder charge to stick, McKinney said, we were looking for drug charges to get on him. The Florida Times-Union couldn't find any example of a successful murder by overdose conviction in which fentanyl caused the death. The fact the legislature felt it was necessary to add fentanyl to the law could bolster Muller's defense, said Ron Wright, a Wake Forest University law professor. The courts are going to have to settle the opium versus opiate question. Murder prosecutions more common. Wright, a Wake Forest University law professor, said using murder charges for overdoses is becoming more common. Prosecutors don't have to worry about intent, only about what drugs killed someone. And the manslaughter prosecutions against Williams and Hamilton could be easier to prove. While Florida's 911 Good Samaritan law grants immunity from drug possession charges to anyone who seeks medical assistance for an overdose, the law says the people must act in good faith. Prosecutors need to prove their negligence, which may include their failure to tell the dispatcher about Brundage's drug use, caused her death. Still, Wright said that prosecution is unusual. Prosecutors usually focus on sellers, not on co-buyers. I'd have to think about why you'd want to do that, he said. Nelson would only say that we are not prosecuting and will not prosecute people who are seeking and do seek medical intervention in good faith. Mueller's attorney said he thinks the manslaughter charges were filed to persuade Williams and Hamilton to testify against Mueller. Prosecutors need Williams and Hamilton if they hope to argue Mueller sold the drugs and the drugs weren't later tainted. In a news conference announcing the charges, Daniels said his detectives would investigate all 49 overdose deaths from last year as homicides, and he said he had more disdain for dealers than other criminals and repeatedly told them to get the hell out of Clay County. By prison, the medical examiner's office, jail, or moving truck, whatever I need to do to facilitate their exodus from Clay County, that's what we'll do. How should we respond? Florida's medical examiners have reported a dramatic increase in fentanyl-related deaths. Fentanyl is a highly addictive pain reliever that can be 50 times more potent than heroin, experts say. Last year, the drug caused more deaths in Florida than any other drug. More than 700 people died from it in the first 6 months, the same number as the entire year before. And according to the Measures for Justice, a nonprofit that analyzes criminal justice data, Clay County has the third highest drug hospitalization rate in the state. Nelson said she believes education and treatment is the best aid for those addicted to drugs. She has doubled the number of defendants sent to drug court, where they can have convictions withheld if they participate in treatment. But Nelson seemed to place dealers and users into separate categories. If I'm a drug dealer and I know I'm cutting heroin with fentanyl, and I know I can be prosecuted for murder, I'm just telling you commonsensically, maybe I think otherwise about what I'm doing. If there's research that shows what I'm saying is off base, I'd like to be able to look at it. I'm telling you something by my gut right now. I can't point to research that proves what I'm saying. In fact, there is research that indicates when prosecutors try to push dealers away from specific drugs, it often leads to more dangerous situations. The Times Union spoke to and read the studies of 10 academics who criticized this type of prosecution. Leo Beletsky, a public health and law professor at Northeastern University, wrote in his most recent journal article, "Murder by overdose prosecutions are likely to fuel the very problem they purport to ameliorate." Prosecutors' focus on reducing heroin likely pushed the drug market toward fentanyl, he wrote, which is more potent, more easily manufactured, and more deadly. During, the pharmacology professor, agreed. You stamp out one fire, and it erupts somewhere down the line in a new fire, and you stamp that one out, and history has shown you don't go to less toxic drugs, to the contrary, you go to more toxic drugs. Catherine McLean at Pennsylvania State University surveyed people who had experienced or witnessed a drug overdose, and many cited fear of manslaughter prosecution as the reason they were hesitant to call 911. Prosecutors and lawmakers use high-profile prosecutions, Beletsky said, to prove they're responding to a crisis. It looks good on TV. The prosecutors, the cops, and the politicians can basically check the box and say we're doing something. But, he said, what they're doing will cost future taxpayers in the form of long prison sentences, and the benefits are minimal at best. Repeated studies have found harsh sentences aren't the best deterrent, especially not for drug dealers who are easily replaceable and particularly unlikely to perform cost-benefit analyses. In response to those studies, Nelson said that tragically, this death occurred in the context of a growing opioid crisis. For us, This is not an academic analysis in deterrence but the legal response to the loss of life. Given how difficult these cases can be, time will tell if Nelson's prosecutors bring more murder charges in the future, and if the charge against Mueller will stand.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt-free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, if I got, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.